how's lunch? Good? Fantastic? Great? Okay, wonderful. So let's start with the discussion on where you should go. In the United States, there are how many four-year colleges and universities? Does anybody know? 3,000? A little too high. Other guesses? 2,000? Almost. Do you think it's higher or lower than 2,000? Higher. It's actually a little lower. It's about 1,800, which is quite a lot. So you have many, many choices. You're not going to want to go to all 1,800, right? The quality is very different. The geography is very different. How many of you have traveled outside Washington State? Okay, so a good number of you. How many of you have traveled to Eastern Washington? Okay, so just a couple of you. And the reason why I ask that is Washington has two research universities, University of Washington and Washington State. But when you cut our state in half, both sides, they're very different. You can't assume that Washington State will have a similar environment to the University of Washington. And so we need to explore those things. So some questions that you should think about when you're planning your transfer is which universities offer your major. We can't assume that all universities will have a business school. Most of them do, but you don't want to pick those who don't if you're an accounting major. Where do you want to live? And this doesn't mean which street or which apartment, but do you like a big city? Would New York City be exciting, or maybe downtown Seattle? Or do you feel safer in a smaller environment? Sometimes students are very excited to go to University of Washington, but they get distracted by the size and all of the things to do, and sometimes they don't focus as much on their studies. So what type of environment do you want to be a part of? Do you want to be on a campus with many international students or a smaller population of international students? I think I know the answer to this one. Is school ranking important? How many of you look at ranking first when you're looking at a school? Okay. International students might be more focused on ranking than American students because you want to be sure when you take that degree home that the employers can recognize that school name, right? Ranking is important, but remember, it's not everything. There might not be a huge difference between a school ranked number 1 and a school ranked number 5. But for you as an individual, those schools may be very different in terms of how you would fit. How much is tuition? How many of you are concerned about tuition? Okay. How many of you have parents who are concerned about tuition? All right, so we might get a different answer whether I ask you or mom and dad. There's a big range of tuition, and if you do the math, there's a huge cost or a huge savings. So if we look at the University of California system, their tuition runs around $30,000 a year. If you look at the Cal State system, they're down around $17,000 or $20,000 a year. So overall, that can be a huge difference. That could be $20,000 to $40,000 that you save if you choose one or the other. And that doesn't mean that money should drive your decisions, but if two schools are very close and one costs less, that might make a difference to you, right? So always be looking at that tuition. When we go back to the geography issue, some cities, like living in California, are going to be more expensive than maybe living in the Midwest. So you have a housing cost that factors in addition to your tuition. How competitive is admission? And I was looking at admittance rates before I came over here, and I was kind of surprised by what I found. So what do you think is the most competitive university in the United States?
Harvard.
I hear Harvard. What else? Stanford. Princeton.
UW.
UW. Good guesses, Caltech. So the most competitive was Stanford. Stanford accepts 5.1% of their applicants. So I think these numbers are very helpful when you're putting together your plan. As an advisor, I want you to dream, and I want you to stretch, and I want you to grow, but I also want you to be realistic. So have some dream schools on your list. Have some schools you think you have a great chance of getting into, and then maybe have what the American students call your safety school. A school you'd be very happy to attend, and you're fairly certain that they will accept you. Sandra's here, and she's got our colored copies. Thank you. All right. So back to that competitive rate. MIT accepts 7.7% of their students. Okay, still very competitive. Harvard is a 5.9. How many of you here have Berkeley at the top of your list? Just a few. It seems like all of my engineering students do. What do you think Berkeley's rate is? 7.7. Good, not quite. Higher.
11%?
Even higher than that.
25.
25, not quite. Berkeley is at 17%, which surprised me because it is so popular. So keep those admissions rates in mind. The other thing to keep in mind is the average GPA. And some universities and colleges won't share what their average incoming GPA is. But I looked at some of our past records, so I looked at Green River Alumni. Does anyone want to guess what the average GPA for Green River students who were admitted to Berkeley was? 3.8? 3.5? It's about a 3.95. And those are with class, that's with the calculus series, with macro and microeconomics, with chemistry. And when I look at those students' transcripts, I cannot tell what their major was, but they took the most difficult class in the main disciplines. So that doesn't mean that you should get discouraged. It doesn't mean you have to be perfect. But if you're shooting for a Berkeley or a Stanford or a Harvard, I want you to know what it takes to get in the door. All right? A lot of other schools are good if you're 3.3, 3.5, 3.7. But when you come in and you bring your list of schools to your advisor, we're going to help you kind of match that up with what reality looks like. All right, so our test score is required. How many of you would choose a different school if your first choice required SAT or ACT? Anybody that would, okay, you might, all right, and that's fair. I have some students that will take schools off their list because they require a TOEFL score. So that's up to you. As your advisor, when you come in to see me, if University of Washington is on your list, I'm going to let you know that they need a recent TOEFL score. And we put that on your to-do list, something to study for, something to schedule. Some of the most competitive schools want SAT and ACT scores from everybody, even if you have a 2-year community college degree. And the last one I think is very important. Where will you excel inside and outside of the classroom? All right, you want to choose a school where you feel like you can do great work, where you're encouraged to grow, you're pushed to grow, but it's not more than you can take on. So it has to be some place where you can develop a social network, where you're happy with your new home, right? Where your faculty are engaging. And I have students think about this when they tell me they want to go to University of Washington. University of Washington is huge, right? You may have a class with 75 students in it, even when you're a junior. If you chose a smaller school, you may have a class with 20 students in it. So think about that learning environment and think about whether or not you're happy to be in a place with lots of people in your major or whether you want something smaller. Good questions to ask. Some of these questions you can ask friends, family, friends of friends. Students come in all the time and tell me, my friends at Berkeley or my friends at University of Minnesota, and here's what they said. That's very helpful. So ask these folks, what do they think their fellow students like the most about the college? What do they like the least? What really kind of, they call it burns their butter, gets them upset? What would they change if they could? What has distinguished the department or the major from other programs? So we might look at the ranking of the university, but we can also look at the ranking of the program. Maybe the university is not in the top 10, but they have an outstanding electrical engineering program or an amazing graphic design program. So we want to think about those things. Where would you get this information? Guesses? The official website. A lot of the big research universities, they're always getting grant money and they want to share this information with the world. So you go to University of Washington's website, you'll find out all kinds of things about research, what their students are doing, awards they're winning. You can also ask the admissions reps. And the admissions reps that are coming to our transfer fair this month may just be able to answer general questions about international admissions, but you can ask them if there are any departments or academic divisions that are known for making outstanding accomplishments. How do international students get involved on campus? Sandra and I both worked at University of Washington, Tacoma, and what I liked about that campus was that international students could become leaders. They could be visible, they could be president of the student body. They were doing a lot of the activities on campus for everybody, not just international students. So they had a chance in a smaller place to really take the lead. So where are your peers getting involved? What are they doing? How are they building their resumes? So not just inside the classroom, but outside the classroom. How many students apply versus get admitted? We talked about that, right? You just Google that, acceptance rate for, put in the university's name, and you'll get the percentage. And then at the bottom, are there any research opportunities with faculty? As a junior or a senior, can you get involved? Or are really graduate students doing much of that work? And at the very bottom, where do students live? Is it hard to get housing? Can you live close to housing? Is it a commuter school? Do you know what a commuter school is? Green River is considered a commuter school. It means most of the students don't live on campus, so they go home at the end of the day. All right, on to the next one. So we talked about size. Do you want to be a big fish in a small pond, or a little fish in a big pond with lots of other fish? So do you know this American expression, big fish in a small pond? Okay, so it means you can really get involved, you can be important, the spotlight can shine on you. Thank you, Sandra. She's an excellent Vanna White. Do you know the game show? All right, so what are your resources for planning? So if you go to the IP website, we have lots of links. And I can't show you, but I'm sure all of you have been to the IP website and probably go there every day, right? So you can find these links. So we have an IP transfer list, and I think that Adam gave that out to us. I'm going to borrow this here. And it's coded. Some of the colleges that are in bold are top-ranked world universities. The colleges that are underlined are top American universities. And it's interesting because not all schools are on both lists. Some are on one, some are on the other. We've had Green River students go to all of these schools. So this gives you a list of things that you can shop with. We also have our transfer pathway partnership. And the list of those schools and their minimum requirement is on our website. What you need to know about transfer pathways, though, is it gets you in the door. It gets you admitted to UC Davis. It does not get you admitted to any particular major. So if you're looking for a competitive major, like business or possibly computer science, you may be admitted to the school, but you may not be admitted to that major. So you have to be aware of two sets of requirements there. You can talk to your faculty. Our engineering faculty here at Green River are fantastic. They have gotten advanced degrees from all over the U.S. All of our Green River faculty have. So you can ask them where they went to school. You can ask them where their former students went to school and find out what their opinions and ideas are. They may have some excellent suggestions for you that you haven't come up with on your own. Your advisors will also help as well. And our advising staff is new. We're getting to know you. We're also getting to know the experiences of our alumni, where they've gone and what type of things they've learned along the way. And our alumni are fantastic in that they share that with us. We can then share it with you. University websites. I've worked with many of you over the past couple weeks digging for information. I think that's the appropriate word. You have to dig. The websites are all formatted differently. Information is categorized under different buttons, and it can be frustrating. So you have to put the time into it. I would love to have my students shop for information first, and then come see me if you can't find what you need, and we will sit down and go through it together. You have to remember to click not only on the transfer link, but also on the international student link. And most colleges won't put their admissions information all in one place. So if you just look under international, you might miss something that's under transfer. We're going to look at alumni. We talked about our alumni. And then friends and family. And just remember that friends and family and friends of friends, everyone has an opinion. So someone may love something that's not right for you, right? Also, they might have a bad story to tell that might not apply to you. So what we call take that with a grain of salt. Take in that information, but that shouldn't be your only source. All right, making sense so far? Okay, good. So what the advisors would like you to do is to create a to-do list, a top 10 list of universities that you would like to know more about. If you'd like to put it in order, great. If you don't want to prioritize it quite yet, that's fine too. And it should be a mix of those dream schools or those reach schools, schools you would be very happy with, and then at least one school you know for sure you can get into. You're going to make a chart of application deadlines, very important, prerequisite courses, tuition rates, and notes. So if you're in FFS or ISCE, you've probably gotten one of these charts. I brought some today and I can bring some more. We'll put it on our website. Thank you. This is what the chart looks like. And it allows you to categorize some information and record it for yourself, right? So these important details. There's a wide range of deadlines. Some schools can have a deadline as early as October for the following fall. And I've already met with some students that have had to revise their list because they didn't know about the October deadline. So if they know for sure they want to go next autumn, we've had to cross those early schools off the list. So some deadlines start in October. There's quite a few that are end of November. And then later, University of Washington is February 15th. A lot of students will come in and tell me it's in November. Their freshman deadline is in November. So that's where you have to look at that information very carefully. Make sure you're finding the transfer international deadline and not the freshman deadline. You're going to work on building your application. So how many of you are already worried about your personal statement? Okay, good. We don't want you to worry about your personal statement, but we want you to think about it. And it's never too early to start. If this is your first quarter at Green River, the pressure is off, right? Go ahead and just write a draft. Do a free write. Don't worry about your grammar. Don't worry about spelling. Just sit down at your computer or pencil paper if you're old-fashioned and write about yourself. Once you get everything out, you can ask your friends, how would you describe me? Or what do you think is my best academic quality? You can have people read your draft. You can play with it, cut and paste. Once it's somewhat polished, bring it to faculty. Bring it to your advisor. If you're absolutely stuck and you're frustrated and you have all of 2 sentences, come on in and see us and we'll help. And there will be some personal statement workshops coming up. But it's never too early to get started on that. Get involved on and off campus. If you don't have anything to write on your personal statement, maybe you need some more activities. So find a club, do some community service, get involved in class or a research project. So anything that can help you talk about teamwork skills, communication, creative problem solving, giving back to your community. It's always a big one for scholarships. So get involved. You don't want to do this the week before your personal statement is due, right? Cramming in all these activities so you have something to write about or put on your resume. So this is a long-term project. The last one can be tricky. Think about recommendations. Sometimes for your admissions application or an application to a major, you have to have 2 or 3 professional recommendations. The advisors can write them for you if we know you well, but if I've only met you for one 5-minute workshop, I probably can't write the best letter for you that's really going to get you in the door. So work on making those relationships with faculty, with staff, with leaders in your community so that they can write a letter. It shouldn't come from your mom, shouldn't come from your best friend, right? You want it to come from somebody who knows you well. So you're going to work on that as a long-term project. So the to-do list can get long. So there's more here. Prepare for required tests and schedule them well in advance. So either TOEFL, SAT, ACT if you need it. If you're a teacher, sometimes there's some teacher pre-tests. Some schools will have a writing test. If you're high school completion, you want to be working closely with Mary Butcher to schedule those tests early on so that if you don't make it the first time, you have a second chance. So again, allow time to take a test twice if you need it. Make sure you have a plan if you're not admitted to your top choice schools. If you get the answer early, you can go back and apply to your safety schools. But if you're at the end of the school year and all of the deadlines have passed, it will be too late to apply for something. Understand that you have to take the responsibility to do this work. So not that the advisors don't want to sit down with you and go over all the details, but there's simply not enough time in the day for us to do that one-on-one with all of you. So if you can come in having done some of the research, we can help you better. It helps us with our time, but we can answer more advanced questions, right? If you've already figured out the tuitions and the deadlines and maybe some of the admission criteria, that helps that quite a bit. All right, where are we at? We're getting ready to submit our applications. Okay, so do see your advisor and use EdPlan on the website to keep your planner updated with degree requirements and transfer requirements. And it is frustrating, there's no one right answer. If you're looking at multiple schools, they may require different classes, and your advisor can help you figure out which is the best set for you. But sometimes you have to gamble. If you've only got one or 2 quarters left worth of classes, and the 2 schools want a completely different set of requirements, you're going to need to choose the best set. Double check the deadline. We talked about freshmen and transfer having different deadlines. Meet with your advisor about 2 quarters prior to your admission deadline to make sure you've got your test scheduled, you're going to make it through the AA or the AS requirements if that's what you're pursuing. Make sure you've completed the international student application. So if you go through the admissions portal on most university websites, there may be a different link for international and American students. If you submit a domestic application and you're an international student, you could automatically go in the deny pile, or they may say, hey, you didn't apply by the deadline, your application was incomplete because you submitted the wrong one. So be very careful that you've got the right application. Even graduate students do that. Students would do that all the time at University of Washington. They would submit the wrong one. At the very bottom, allow ample time to submit test scores and transcripts. Some universities will give you 2 deadlines, an admissions deadline and a document deadline. So the document deadline means your official transcripts, your official test scores have to be in the office at that date. I prefer for you to be on the safe side and have everything at the school by the deadline. If you think, it'll be okay, my TOEFL score will get there a couple weeks after the deadline, a competitive university could put you in the incomplete pile, and then you would be denied. To follow up on that, if it's an online admissions profile, be very careful to check to make sure it's complete. So submit it before the deadline, not the night before, not 11:59 p.m. when it's due at 12, right? Make sure everything is there. University of Washington used to put notes if you were missing something, and I'm surprised by how many students never went back to their profile to see if something was missing. Follow up on any requests. Students ask me all the time, what happens to spring quarter? Are those classes just thrown out if I'm applying for fall and the deadline was in November? And that's not the case. The 4-year colleges are watching you very closely. So you should plan to send a Green River transcript every time your grades post until you start your first quarter. So if you are admitted in January for September, you'll go ahead and send them your fall transcript, your winter transcript, summer, and spring, all of them. So they'll need one each quarter. And if they're asking for anything else, make sure you follow up with that. Review your offer letter carefully. They may only give you 2 or 3 weeks to make a decision. They may only give you a limited amount of time to send in your deposit. If you're stuck, if you're waiting on your first choice school to make a decision, contact the school who gave you an offer and see if they'll give you an extension. Sometimes they will. And also see your advisor. I know it's hard if you've applied to 5 schools and the first 2 are pushing you for a commitment and you really want to wait for the others. So there's a bit of a strategy there. Remember to apply for graduation from Green River and submit your exit form for the I-20 transfer. And that I-20 piece happens in your last quarter. All right, on that exit form we have you tell us where you're going and also any other schools that you were accepted to for our record keeping. Okay, we went through a lot of information. Whew. So, researching transfer options, Getting answers to the questions and preparing your applications requires a lot of work, and it's not always easy. I do this research all the time, and sometimes I can't even find the answers. It's hard sometimes to get an answer from a phone call or an email from a really popular school. If you email Berkeley's admissions, I don't know if you'll get a response. Sometimes the advisors can get a response, all right? So if you've already tried and there's something you have to know, let us know and we'll try to help you get that answer. Take the time to make a really good choice. I have some students who accepted their first offer just because they were too nervous. They didn't want to wait for the other answers. If you have time, feel free to take that time and make sure that where you're going is the right place. If you can afford to visit, do it. You don't want to show up in a new city at a new school and just get the feeling that it's not the right place for you. So we hope you're having an excellent experience at Green River, and we want the next 2 years to be just as good, right? It's a very important decision. And finally, congratulations. International Programs is very proud of all of that you accomplish, all the really great schools you get admitted to, and then the things you do at those schools and in your career. So you are part of a very talented group of students. I hope that you support each other and really feel proud of what it is you're doing.